Hari Sadu, which is really our iconic ad. It was all built on very real consumer insights.
Right.
You know, there was a survey done where it was discovered that, you know, job seekers don't leave their jobs, but they leave their bosses. And that's how Hari Sadu was born. A brilliant sales team who was partnering with people that were coming in, which was clients. The right marketing communication, the right marketing mix. All this put together, I think, has created that magic. We help you find a partner, and then we help you find your dream home. To start search marketing, we started search in SEM in 2004, you know. So we've kind of pioneered a lot of things, whether it was our apps, etc. But it actually comes from that culture of not being afraid to fail. When Facebook was actually launched, we were their first advertisers in the country. So I think, firstly, being business aligned is very important, right? It's a question that gets asked a lot of times, and a lot of startups generally ask this: what should we do? You know, it is tempting, right? Advertising is very tempting because it is the glamorous part of marketing. You need to be where your consumer is, right? I just have one tip. One is, it's while, you know, by spending money, by advertising, by marketing, it's very easy to get footfalls, traffic, etc. because you are buying it. First, be very sure that your product is right.
Today, I'm in conversation with Sumeet Singh, the Chief Marketing Officer at InfoEdge. Sumeet, thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. So really, to start this conversation, InfoEdge is definitely a pioneer of sorts. And I'm not exaggerating here, because it's been a pure play internet company before we even understood what that meant. And with the lack of infrastructure in terms of the digital space at that point, they paved the way and sort of laid the foundation for all the other technology companies that have come after that. So could you just take us through InfoEdge's journey as a tech company, really?
So, you know, I mean, I think kudos to Sanjeev and Hitesh and the founding team at that time. And you're right, we started in 1997. That's when Naukri started, actually. InfoEdge started a little before, but Naukri, which is really a brand that everybody knows and a household name, started in 1997 with hardly any internet users in the country. There were a couple of thousand users in the country. I think there were a few things that were right. One, it was a good nascent revolutionary idea, you know. And both Sanjeev and Hitesh have maintained this, you know, within InfoEdge, not only for Naukri, but it is, I think, a very cultural thing for all our businesses that create products that customers and consumers really want. Because when you create a product for which there is a real need, you know, if that product has been created well, there will users always be ready to use it because there is a real need. So I think in our journey in Naukri, and, you know, that's the brand that we started with, there were a few things. One, the right investment in product, identifying what those needs were. In the earlier years, when our sales team was formed after the first round of funding that we raised, you know, Hitesh very often says that so many recruiters, both at the company side and the consultants, did not even have email addresses, right? Because it was way back. So the sales team would first create email addresses for them. They would work with them as partners, really to teach them how to use the internet, you know, how to use the portal, how you should have, and in those days it was Yahoo and Hotmail, really, you know. So those were the days, I think. So right from the beginning, to work with your consumer, to work with your customer as a partner, I think, you know, always pays off in any vertical, in any business. The other thing was a very sharp focus on whatever we are doing, we must do well. And let's not try and solve all the problems in one go. So to prioritize and to kind of get into areas deep, and then just not leave them because you're not doing something for a tick mark, but really to try and solve a problem and be at it and do it very well, you know, I think was the secret. And then, of course, came marketing, where we then went out when we were very confident of the product. We also started with performance marketing and brand marketing both at the same time. So, you know, so performance would drive traffic, right? And we being an internet business, you would want more and more users to come, right? More and more users to get exposed. So we were doing advertising on portals like, at that time, Hotmail, Yahoo, Rediff, because these were the portals at that time that was actually being used. We would do the search engine that we were actually advertising on was Overture, which was Yahoo's search engine that time, you know, and Google came later. So that's how we started. And then if you look at all our branding communication, our first ad, and then Hari Sadu, which is really our iconic ad, it was all built on very real consumer insights. You know, there was a survey done where it was discovered that, you know, job seekers don't leave their jobs, but they leave their bosses. And that's how Hari Sadu was born. So I think when you keep your ears to the market, to the ground, and when you create the right products, you know the real problems that people are facing, you have the right insights in your communication, then that communication obviously becomes very, very relatable, right? And I think all this put together, the right product, a brilliant sales team who was partnering with people that were coming in, which was clients, the right marketing communication, the right marketing mix, all this put together, I think has created that magic. You know.
I think the campaign that you spoke about, I think a lot of us have grown up watching it. And you mentioned it, and I can like visualize it as you spoke about. So again with like InfoEdge, really, you know, as you mentioned that you operate in different verticals, and so to speak, it's like a life cycle that you're covering.
That's
right.
Yes.
With Shiksha, with education.
Yes.
And then you have Naukri.com. That's like the flagship product or vertical that a lot of us know about.
Yes.
And from education to jobs to marriage and real estate as well. How can I miss that out?
Yes. Yeah. So we say that, you know.
Absolutely.
We educate you, then we help you find a job, then we help you find a partner, and then we help you find your dream home, right?
Right. So in that pursuit, really, right, in terms of branding and advertising, how do you make sure that, because they're very diverse verticals at the end of the day,
Yes.
but at the end of the day, it's also part of a parent company or a house of brands, if we may term it that way. So how do you make sure that your brand consistency is surely maintained throughout your varied strategies as well? So what's the common pain point that you address, or what is the marketing strategy that you think has held you well?
So, you know, firstly, Priyanka, we don't really build so after every brand or every communication you see, we don't necessarily say this is an InfoEdge company, you know. So we are not really building, so while we are a house of brand, there is no unified InfoEdge branding policy or playbook, you know, because we're not really using that. Each of the brands has its own identity, you know, has its own set of competitors. As you said, they're very varied, right? Has its own target audiences, which are so different from the other brand, and also internally has its own marketing teams, you know. So while there are some things that we do centrally, you know, because they're easier to drive centrally, media buying, for example, always economies of scale work. So while there are some things that are done unified and centrally, each of these teams, because each of these brands are at a different life cycle as well. So the strategies are very different. Within each brand, we make sure that there is unification, right? You know, that whatever we are doing there from a marketing standpoint, etc., that it is trying to give out a unified message. At the same time, if you look at our communication, and I think a lot of times I'm alienated of this, is we are not extremely always standardized like a lot of brands are. You know, we do sometimes use a variety of color. We do a lot of fun stuff, and we enjoy doing it. So I think the beauty is also that our founders have made sure that we have the freedom to experiment, you know, and I think that plays a very, very big role. When you can really experiment without the fear of failure, you know, so culturally it's failing fast rather than not failing
at all,
which is a great, you know, which makes me feel very empowered. And if you have that empowerment, I think as a functional leader, it's very easy to kind of then pass that on even to your teams. And that's where a lot of magic happens, because 4 things fail, but that one thing works, you know, and then that gives you a first mover advantage, you know, stuff like that. So I think we've been pioneers in a lot of fields, even when it comes to marketing and branding. We were the first ones in the country, almost the first ones to start search marketing. We started search in SEM in 2004. You know, so we've kind of pioneered a lot of things, whether it was our apps, etc. But it actually comes from that culture of not being afraid to fail.
Right.
You know,
They've given you the
So,
freedom to
yes,
experiment. like you
Yes,
said.
I think that's the key, really.
You also mentioned in one of your interviews about the importance of think outside in. Now, as somebody who's not from the advertising world or the marketing world, could you really help us understand what that means? And also, if a business person, by that I mean an entrepreneur or an enterprise, were to sort of adopt that approach, how do you think that would help them sort of positively leverage the opportunity of that? So how does that work?
Yeah. Okay. You know, sometimes whatever we are doing, obviously you pursue what's working for you, right? But if you get so engrossed in just that, and you feel that this is the only thing which is the right thing to do, and you don't have your, you know, eyes and ears on the world outside, you will miss out a lot of things, right? So I think when I say that we should think outside in, it basically means, as a marketer, one, have your ears and, you know, eyes on the ground in the market that you operate in, which I think a lot of us do, you know. And secondly, also keep a rest on what is happening in the environment at large, you know. So we created our first Facebook ad way back when Facebook was actually launched. We were their first advertisers in the country.
There's some milestones,
you know,
really.
And let me tell you honestly, that advertising didn't really work, though Mark Zuckerberg actually unveiled it at the annual conference and we got coverage. But it didn't work on metrics. Why? Because it was a bit too early, right? India did not have enough Facebook users, right? But we created something with them. So I think when you kind of keep experimenting and try and do things just when they're emerging, you know, for example, in Jeevan Sathi started content creation and content marketing 4 years ago, right? So today they've got a template that works for them. They know this is working, they know what to do, you know, because they started early on. Today everybody, all of us are doing influencer, we're doing creator, right? Because that's the way now. But those who started early would have not always got early success, but you do kind of then iterate a lot, you know what is bombing, what is working. You also get a lot of price advantage. You know, right at the beginning, when you start working, when you start partnering, there were some creators who just partnered with us because it was a world where they were also, you know, growing, emerging, you know. So I think doing a lot of that has kind of helped, and outside in, you will only if you know what's happening around, you know, read, go and network with people, go and meet other marketers, go and spend time with agencies, etc., and also get to know what they're doing. So beyond just a brief, beyond just having a relationship with a vendor as a vendor, the moment you start engaging with them and actually treat them as a partner, I think there's a lot that you also need, you know, you get to learn. And then you know what to apply, what not to apply. So that's what we've kind of really, I think that's something that in most of our departments, and not just marketing, but we kind of do that. And Hitesh and Sanjeev also, both if they've, you know, heard of a new trend or something, they will come and share it. If I've heard of something, I will definitely share it with my teams. And we encourage our teams to go out, attend conferences, network, so that you get to know what's happening outside. You know, we started on Gen AI last year. Our first project we did in Gen AI was April last year.
How's that working out?
So it worked very well for us. Now there are so many more tools, there are so many things that are being done. But we stood out at that time, not because, oh, nobody could have done it. I think just because we did it right at the beginning.
Correct. The first mover advantage.
The first mover advantage. We could do, for example, on one of our businesses, which is the business in the Gulf, you know, Naukri Gulf, we have a job site in the Gulf. The problem was always creating ads, you know, digital videos, etc., with Arab casts, etc., costs a lot, right? And we are very proud to say that we're frugal, you know. So that costs a lot to shoot there, to get that cast. But Gen AI enabled us to do a lot of stuff, you know, for that market. And we created an avatar called Nadia. She's, you know, and she's gone into phase 2, phase 3. There's a lot of product education we've been able to do around it. A lot of job seeker education that we've been able to do around it. So I think a lot of these things we've learned along the way. And that's what outside in is really. That keep an eye outside as well.
So moving on, Sumeet. So now a lot of times people or businesses struggle to sort of strike the right balance in aligning the business objectives of their enterprise with the marketing strategies, right? So any tips for them particularly that you think they would benefit from balancing this, striking the right balance really?
See, one, I feel anything that is not business aligned or not driving the overall business objective should not be called marketing.
Right.
Because end of the day, marketing has to be business aligned, right?
Absolutely.
If the business has a set of targets, which is this, and I have a target which is, I'm going this direction,
Yeah.
I will in my silo keep feeling I'm doing a great job. They in their silo might feel they are doing a great job, but end of the day, it's not going to work for the organization,
Absolutely.
right? So I think, firstly, being business aligned is very important, right? It's a question that gets asked a lot of times, and a lot of startups generally ask this, what should we do, it is tempting, right? Advertising is very tempting because it is the glamorous part of marketing,
You're visible.
Create an ad, you're visible. Earlier you did it on TV, now you do it on the digital mediums. And now what ads? Everybody's creating reels and YouTube shorts, and because that's the new way. But I think what you need to do is, one, if you align it to your business, you know what is important, right? So, for example, if I'm an internet business and traffic is very important for me, because I want to first see that, what I have built, how are consumers liking it? Then I have performance marketing to switch on first, rather than straight away going to brand. Maybe that's a good way to go first, and then marry it with brand. And today brand should be done digitally, it should be done in short form, because that's where the consumer attention is. You build awareness that way. On the other hand, this is easy said, for an internet business, but there are traditional businesses as well, and a lot of businesses are not internet. So what should you be doing, right? So a lot of businesses, if you see, start with sampling. And that still happens. Earlier sampling was happening on a shop floor. Right? You went to a supermarket because you used to go to supermarkets and stores. People would come and say, would you taste this? Will you take this? You got samples everywhere.
The freebies are always a good one.
Yes. Today that's all happening online, right? Companies have innovated, right? All the traditional makeup companies, all the newer makeup companies, they're sending you samples through your Gmail. They're sending their coupon codes now available, right? So there's sales on a lot more and more genuine than maybe they used to be in the times when we were growing up. So I think things are evolving, and the right mix. I think the right answer is, what is your business objective? What is it? And that's why I say that don't have a separate marketing objective and a separate business objective, because a lot of people do that, right?
They need to be on the same page.
If they're on the same page, they have to converge. They have to help each other, right? And once you do that, I think the balance will get straight itself. But if I say, oh, my target is increasing my TOMA, right? And the business head has a target of, say, growth of 20%, right? I'll keep doing stuff that increases my TOMA. Not necessarily will that stuff necessarily increase 20%. Hopefully, it will. So I think somewhere I feel the balance comes from actually also knowing how to marry them. Marry both. And then you'll come to the right strategy. The other one thing I definitely want to mention is not undermining, especially if you're an internet business. In the earlier days, it was SEO, right? So that
we're still talking about it though.
So, and ASO today on the plate. So, so for apps also, that is also important. I think not to ignore that, because a lot of us mistake marketing as paid marketing only, but marketing does much more than advertising, right?
This is one part of it.
It's just one tiny part. There's so much more. You kind of look at what's happening on your businesses, you look at metrics. There is so much of organic stuff that you can do. So I think all that is also very, very important, and we should not just feel that the only way is to spend dollars and get what we want to. And if we kind of consciously as founders, etc., are conscious of these things, I think we will then build them in our teams also, because we will force them to think hard, right?
Absolutely. As you spoke about, this micro influencers as well, that really brings me to the next question, or that I would like to understand, because we've seen that influencer growth in our country has boomed exponentially, really. I'm not even exaggerating, but at the end of the day, it's not something that's been helpful for all the brands equally.
Yes, of course.
Because it depends on how they've adopted a strategy, whom have they collaborated with or partnered with. Now with the mushrooming of the micro influencers, targeting the local audiences, hoping that will impact their profits or revenue generation in a better manner. What are your thoughts on that?
So, if I talk to a lot of D2C brands, they're using a lot of influencers to actually drive performance, like we do performance marketing on Google and Meta. They do a lot of performance marketing through influencers, right? And because they have a product, different influencers are given different coupon codes, and today you have enough nano and micro influencers who are ready to work on performance. So I think that is happening, right? Because as you said, today the youngsters, the TG and even my age group, we're all actually on these social media apps.
Right.
These apps have made their algorithms so sticky and good that you end up watching reels also for 45 minutes to 1 hour
and
without realizing. You don't realize, So we're all spending time there.
Right.
And therefore, I think brands are innovating and also therefore using a lot of this. And it's important to use it. You need to be where your consumer is, right? We've seen, for example, one of our brands, Jeevan Sathi, which is really in the relationship space, in the space of romance and love and life partnerships. There are a lot of regional influencers we use as well, because arranged marriages are about communities, right? So we use a lot of regional influencers, and not only for the South, we've also used OTTs, like Stage, which do very well in states like Haryana and Rajasthan. We do regional influencers, and they're working, right? Now, having said this, one of your questions was, how do you know it's working, right? So I think while it's easier for the D2C brands to know, because a lot of them are using performance, for us, we hear a lot of qualitative feedback. When we use the micro, nano, we don't see a spurt in our numbers when we're using them, right? But we've kind of seen that the strategies that working for us is every quarter you need to have 1 or 2 spikes. So you need to work with 1 or 2 larger names, you know, that have a few million followers, because that's what creates the spike. But we're sustaining it with nano and macro and micro. And so that's what's kind of working for us. We don't have sales numbers, so we can't measure and say this, but we don't see, I would say, over a period of time, if you have a sustained strategy, because we're looking at it as a sustained strategy, So one is you could do a big influencer, and we used to do that when we started in 2020, 21. One big Amy Weird, and we would see Punjab numbers spike up, Delhi numbers spike up. That used to happen, right? But then you can't do, because it's expensive. Influencer marketing doesn't come cheap. So you can't keep, every 2 weeks you can't have a big influencer. It becomes very unaffordable. So now we've kind of got this strategy. If you see for Naukri, we actually with Hotstar put together something called Hardly Working, which is, stand-up comedy, right? With Jeevan Sathi, we do stand-up comedy, we do long form, we also do short form with influencers. So for different businesses, I think it's different. One of the things we've always maintained, Priyanka, is that don't do something just to tick mark, So we've always, as brand managers, felt that we should do something that is going to work for us and is aligned with our objectives, rather than this is a fad and I must do it. It's not very easy to have creators in real estate, as in Jeevan Sathi. So should 99 acres feel bad? No. 99 acres should sensibly do what will work for them, and that's what they're doing. Jeevan Sathi, on the other end, every quarter might have 200 creator pieces, but maybe 99 acres just does about 10 or 12, because that is what is working for it. So things like that we keep in mind, and this is how we're using it in different brands, and there's a different strategy everywhere, but we've kind of realized one spike and then sustainability with the other influencers works. And I think regional is important. Not only does it work, I also feel that it is very important if you want to actually go into regions. It's
you penetrate
critical.
The more newer markets.
You penetrate, they recall. They recall it. As well, because there's lesser clutter there.
Correct.
There's lesser clutter, there's lesser content being made. You have a huge affinity to that regional influencer.
Absolutely.
So we are seeing that, there's a lot of recall, and slowly over now, since we've been doing it consistently, we can see the results over a period of time.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd like to touch upon a couple of things, as you said, that marketing and advertising is an expensive affair. So
advertising is, yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when it comes to a entrepreneur who's just starting out, or a young business really, how much do you think they should allocate, or what tips would you like to share with them? And secondly, InfoEdge has always been an entity at large which has been very instrumental in funding startups across verticals and been also known for the mentorship that they offer. So if somebody's starting out, what are the tips that you would like to share with them?
So the first part of your question was really how much, is there a percentage to the overall revenue that should go into marketing? We don't even operate at that even now at this stage, right? I don't think it's easy to really have that percentage. I think it's more sensible to have your business objectives, know what your revenue is, and I think every entrepreneur will have his or her own way. Own risk appetite, own way of, leadership and building that company. I just have one tip. One is, it's while, by spending money, by advertising, by marketing, it's very easy to get footfalls, traffic, etc. because you are buying it. First, be very, very sure that your product is right. Because once you get people, if they're not happy with what they've seen, it's very difficult to get people again.
And the trust.
The trust, the credibility are very, very important, right? So most startups will do it for awareness. If you're well funded, great. If you're starting out, maybe going the digital route, pick up a market, try and get that right first, and then replicate that. It could be one publisher, it could be one market, it'll depend on the business. But I think getting it right, and I'm not using the word pilot, but I'm saying a territory, and then replicating it will just be mitigating your risks. And doing something, it's easier to get it right for a smaller piece and then replicate it is what my advice would be. The second piece where you spoke about InfoEdge really investing in a lot of startups and the mentoring angle, Sanjeev really looks after that, and we have corporate development teams. We've got 2 offices in Gurgaon and Noida where the corp dev teams sit because we have 2 funds, and they meet entrepreneurs day in and day out. I think they meet hundreds of companies every month.
That takes a lot of dedication.
Yes, absolutely. It's a competent team. They scout out for companies approach them, they meet those teams, and I'm sure that a lot of them they mentor. A lot of the portfolio companies that we have as InfoEdge, whenever this corporate development team feels that they need mentorship from one of the functional experts, they put us in touch with them. Do we run a mentoring program specifically for them? I'm not the right person to answer because I'm not on the corp dev team. But I do know that a lot of times when they're looking at branding, when they're looking at marketing, when they're looking at hiring or even strategizing, whenever the team feels right, they pull us in from within InfoEdge. But I'm sure that team and Sanjeev must be mentoring a lot of startups, not only that we invest in, but even others. We know that Hitesh mentors a lot of startups as well. And a lot of us, there are a lot of women entrepreneurs, for example, who have come to me at different points in time. A lot of people who've kind of bounced out their strategies just to know are we in the right direction, like a sounding board. And all of us do it happily, because that's how we all learn, right? There's a lot for us to learn from them as well. So that's how it goes.
So with this conversation is like a masterclass of sorts. Like I haven't been to an MBA classroom, but if it was something like this, I think everyone stands to benefit from it. So thank you so much.
So it was so nice being here, and I must say your questions were really well researched. I've enjoyed this, Priyanka.
This conversation's been delightful, Sumeet. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.